Planning Board. Those in attendance are Mr. Terrell, myself, Russell Denver, Mr. Fonseca, Mr. Punderson, Bailey Mitchell, our Director of Planning and Community Development, and Nina Fazio from the Office of Planning and Community Development. I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the audience who might be recording this meeting. If so, could you please state your name? Hearing none. I'd like to do the approval of the minutes. So do I have a motion to approve the June 20th, 2023 open session minutes? Although I don't think we can do that. We're going to have to delay it because
No, we should be good.
the two of us.
Yeah, everyone can vote for the approval of minutes.
Okay. All right.
As long as they reviewed them.
All right.
I make a motion to approve the June 2023 open session minutes.
A second.
Okay, by roll call, Mr. Fonseca.
Yes.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. I'd like to just give a shout out to both Bailey and Nina for really an outstanding job on those. That was a difficult one to put together. And the meeting minutes of July 18th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Do I have a second?
You're supposed to read it.
Make a motion to approve July 18th, 2023 open session minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. By roll call, Mr. Fonseca.
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. There is no old business. So under new business, Mr. Terrell.
Read them.
Yep.
All right. Case SPRW 2023-24. A request for site plan review waiver of construction of a welding shop at 45 Deer Park Drive. This is parcel ID 53-52-60. Located Industrial Garden Park Zoning District. Applicant Rachel Dodge, GMH Fence Company, PO Box 551, East Long Meadow, Mass. 1028. 7/18/2023.
Someone from the applicant available? In person or on Zoom? Rachel Dodge.
Nobody here from GMH.
Anything else from them?
They came late last time.
Why don't we make a motion to continue this, and if they come later in the meeting, we can take them as we fit them in. So do I have a motion to continue?
I move to continue the public hearing on GMH fence welding shop proposal.
Do I have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. By roll call, Mr. Fonseca.
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Next item, please.
All right. Case SPRW 2023-25. Request for site plan review waiver for home office for Sherry's Gifts.com, an online business at 9 Shawmut Street, assessors parcel ID 23-25-86, located in the resident B zoning district. Applicant Sherry Deaver, 9 Shawmut Street, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01028.
Is there someone from the applicant? Oh, hello.
Muted.
Sorry, hi,
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
good.
So we'd like to hear from you. So what your proposed business is, hours of operation. This is mostly for people in the audience and people that are on Zoom who don't have the ability to read your application.
Sure. So it's all online. I'm going to try and build a website using just print on demand suppliers that drop ship. So literally, if orders come in, they go right to the drop shipper and the item is sent. It's basically for the Christmas season. Some jewelry, some T-shirts, keychains, types of things like that. I will not have anything at my house. I have no interest in packing and shipping or buying inventory or any of that. I'm just trying to do everything above board, even though it's all online with a drop shipper because of tax reasons and things like that. So.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve his request for waiver of site plan review for sherrysgifts.com at 9 Shawmut Street, home office of an online only business.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none by roll call. Mr. Fonseca,
Aye.
Mr. Punderson. Aye. Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Next
Thank
item. Yes, thank you. Next item.
All right, case SPRW 2023-26, request for site plan review waiver for the installation of electric bus charging stations and associated improvements at 159 Denslow Road. This is parcel ID 10-14-3, located in the Industrial Garden Park zoning district. Applicant Lower Pioneer Valley Education Collaborative, LP 174 Brookfield Ave, Springfield, Mass. 01018.
Anyone from the applicants here?
Zach Football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Never really hard though.
Hi there. Can
Hello?
you hear me now?
We can.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Yes, I'm Zach from Weston and Sampson, presenting this project on behalf of LPVEC. We also have on the call Anna Bishop, their Director of Finance, and Jamie Fair from Weston and Sampson as well. Just a quick project background. So LPVEC was given grants by EPA and Mass CEC to purchase new electric school buses, and they intend to operate 5 out of this East Longmeadow facility. So the project is to include electrical infrastructure to support the charging of these buses. And Bailey, did you have that PDF that I had sent you? All right, great, thank you. All right, so you are looking at the parcel right there highlighted in yellow. You can see the school buses parked down near the southern end of the site. This area is surrounded by a fence, and it's roughly 400 feet setback from the road. You can see around it, there's a solar array and woods, so not much in the vicinity. Can you go to the next page, Bailey? An example photo of one of the charging stations. There are proposed to be 6 of these. You can see bollards in front of it for traffic protection. That would also be proposed in this project. And you see a transformer, an electrical transformer in the back there in green. So we would have a transformer and a switchgear supporting these chargers. And like this photo, the area around the chargers would also be finished with an angular pervious crushed stone. This is for ease of maintenance and better traction for employees who will be using these chargers. Next page, please. All right, and this is the site plan we submitted. You can see the chargers are proposed to go on the east side of the site with the transformer and the switchgear. And in this area, that fence that I was talking about, that security fence, will be shifted just a few feet to the north to make a little more room for the chargers and conduits for the wiring that supports the chargers. There will also be conduits stubbed out for possible future chargers down the line as well. And in the middle of this charging area, there is a proposed light pole. It'll be a shielded light with no off-site illumination. And then we're working with National Grid to get power to this back area. The proposed method for that is overhead wiring up until about where the road splits off, where the driveway splits off. And at that point, the wiring will transition underground. There'll be some trenching along that northern edge of pavement until it gets to the transformer. And this area of trenching is going to be in a grassed area for the most part and will be returned to its previous state with loam and seed. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is there are wetlands present on the site. You can see the blue line is the 100-foot buffer zone associated with these wetlands. We would be looking to protect the wetlands with silt fences and catch basin inlet protection devices. And an NOI has been submitted for this project as well. And that Conservation Commission hearing is next Wednesday. So I will leave it at that and open it up for any questions or comments.
Any questions from the board?
How many future stubs are you gonna leave? Stubs for the future you're gonna leave?
Yeah, it would be 17, if I'm recalling correctly, just enough to basically fill that upper line of bus parking spaces there. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
A total of 17 or 12 plus the proposal from tonight? 6.
It would be 6 plus 17 for a total of 23.
Okay. Okay.
So this whole side.
Yeah.
Anybody spoken with fire? Lots of comments from fire. There's
No, for the waivers, they don't typically comment on.
I guess my thoughts are there's gonna be some massive charging stations, charging batteries, and combined with gas. I mean, I just want to make sure that fire would be prepared to get to the back of this lot to manage that. Right?
I mean, we can see if Zach has any access or emergency access, possibly, but
Mr. Wallen, did you follow that? What type of emergency access do you have?
Yeah, so if you go back, probably the aerial image is the most helpful. The site is open all the way to the back, and so even though there is that security fence, the area above that green island that you see there, with the most northern bus parking, all of that is still open. There's no fence, and they can very easily drive into that area with where the employees generally park. And so I guess that's the short answer.
Yeah, and I guess the other half of that question was, is there any remediation? You're going to have obviously electrical towers there, which are even larger than you'd have for a Tesla car, right? These are going to be charging buses with substantially larger battery packs.
Mm-hmm.
If there was an issue in terms of fire, you're also combining it with diesel, right? Because the other buses are still running on diesel. Is there preventative measures like a gas station where it would have a fire suppression, something like that? Because it is in the back, which is fine, but there's still a lot of other stuff that can burn.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen plenty of things where these batteries have had issues, right?
Yeah, there was nothing currently proposed for that. I know this is still still an emerging kind of topic for everybody in terms of the electric buses or electric vehicles, but generally they don't do fire suppression for unenclosed outdoor areas like this. Oh, and my colleague Jamie Fair was, I think he had something to say here. If you could let him speak.
You gotta back out a little.
Yes, thank you. Jamie Fair with Western Sampson. I'm working with Zach on this, and I just wanted to chime in on the question for fire protection. It's a good question. It's something that's being kind of evaluated as this technology progresses, but right now there isn't any requirement or need necessarily for like a fixed overhead fire suppression system for an outdoor application like this. If there was a fire with one of these buses, as Zach was explaining, the fire department would have full access to that area back there and could use, their traditional methods with water to basically suppress and control that fire. But there isn't an industry standard or a requirement. I think, for something like this, they're just not doing. You would need to do sort of like an overhead fixed sprinkler system. It would be pretty extensive. So they're not doing that for these types of charging facilities. That helps answer the question.
It does, and maybe Bryce is another one. Is there will be clear, easy access. Obviously, you don't want to hit an electrical fire with water, right? So you would want to make sure there's a clear, easy shut off for those. That's obviously been addressed.
Yes, yeah. These come with shut off, so everything would be shut down in the event of a fire. Yes, absolutely. Yep, it's a good point. Yep.
Any further questions from the board? Hearing none?
Just one statement that I'd like to make. I spent 17 years on the school committee, as most of you know. For 16 years, I was the East Long Meadow rep to the LPBEC Board of Directors. I just want to state tonight that since I am no longer on the school committee, I have no vested interest in this organization anymore, just as a statement of transparency.
Okay. It's a pleasure of the board.
I make a motion to approve this request for a waiver of site plan review for the installation of electric bus charging stations and associated improvements at 159 Denslow Road.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none by roll call, Mr. Fonseca.
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. You're all set. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think you read it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open the public hearing for case ZN 2023-04. Members present are Mr. Fonseca, Mr. Punderson, Mr. Terrell, and myself, Russell Denver. And I ask the clerk to please read the notice.
Case ZN-2023-04 for proposed amendment of the Town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws 450 table 3-1 schedule of use regulations in Article 11 definitions in relation to home office in order to improve administration efficiency, clarity, and improve consistency with Massachusetts general law. District Town of East Long Meadow Planning Board, 60 Center Square, East Long Meadow, map 01028.
So the petitioner is the planning board, but I'm going to turn it over to the planning director.
Don, you kicked me out, I think.
I think you will.
Yeah, can you just, thank you. So I actually prepared a short presentation to kind of walk through the 4 zoning amendments. So I'll start kind of with an overview of all 4, and then we'll just go one by one, and I'll let you kind of read those in as we go. But they're all kind of related with the exception of the last one. So I do kind of want to give that overview first. So there we go. So, I just want to kind of generalize the proposed amendments were proposed with the purpose of improving the clarity of the language and also the efficiency of the permitting process. And creating clear triggers and thresholds for site plan review generally and waivers for site plan review. And then also kind of hopefully shifting our department and our review of these applications to the online permitting software that the rest of the town kind of has been adopting. The building department's already on there, and we're reviewing all of our business certificates that way as well. And it's been really effective. And we're actually definitely being more extensive in our review through that. So I want to kind of get those benefits through our process as well. With that, also, there's a couple of things that don't really translate well to our new form of government that was adopted through the new charter, and the bylaws just kind of weren't translating. So just clarifying some of that within the language, and then also hoping that it kind of, in effect, allows the planning board to focus on other things like planning initiatives and critical bylaw changes like we're doing tonight. So the first, I also wanted to just quickly show everyone that on the town website, we do have all of these pending bylaws kind of on display for everyone that you can go in, you can read the documents that are in front of the planning board right now. You just go to the town's website, hover over the government tab, and click on the town code parentheses bylaws, and it'll take you to this page. And all of the pending bylaw adoptions and amendments are here. You just arrow over to all of them, and you can click on the documents. You can see when the public hearings are. You can participate that way. And now that we've done that, let me get back to my presentation and move forward to the first one of tonight, which is in relation to home offices. So just generally a couple, or I guess to summarize the changes, generally there's minor language changes for clarity and consistency throughout the section. But the big changes are changing use G1 and the table of uses to, or from home office, comma studio or cottage industry to home occupancy or cottage food operation. And then removing the requirement for a waiver of site plan review and replacing that with the requirement for a business license, which is already required. But typically, we actually find out through the business license process that someone is applying for home office, and then that's how they get sent to us. So they're already doing that for the most part. And then removing standard and condition E because it's redundant with condition F, which is also listed as condition E under there. And that's the big changes to the table. And then again, consistency here, home occupation being defined in the definitions section and cottage food operation being defined as well. Again, for people in the audience, those definitions are available online where I showed you to access that. And I'll open it up to the board for questions.
So why don't you just give a practical on the waiver of site plan for a home office? So it's currently done this. How then would it be treated involving this board?
Yeah. So right now, the process starts, like I said, with the clerk's office. It gets sent to us. Then we set up a meeting. The applicant has to come present. Typically, we have a deadline that's like a week or two in advance for waivers. And that's if they qualify for a waiver, which only in the current language, only this board can make that determination. So for example, the fence or the buses tonight, the last application, we suggested to them that they apply for a waiver because it's a faster process, a little bit easier. But truthfully, that could be seen as a bigger project, so they could need a full site plan review. Under the current process, only the board can make that determination. You decided to go with a waiver tonight, and I think that's great. So for the business, or I guess the home office side of things, same process, they do the same thing, but they have to wait. Another person on the agenda tonight was the home office, Sherry Dever. I actually went back and forth with her. Nina was out for a week and I was, one man show. So a little struggle with her, forgot to ask her for the payment. So she had to come back to town hall again. We needed 7 copies of the application. She had to go make copies. It's a whole process for the applicant. And for the new process, it would be all online. We would be able to print out the application ourselves and bring it to the board meeting if that's required. But some of the home office wouldn't be required to do that. So for the waivers, I'm kind of equating the same thing, but the waivers would come to the board. But for the home office, it would just be the business license process. And if the board wants to keep up to date on that, we are also starting to put the business certificates as they are issued to our website, and I can show you that on here now if you want to.
Yeah, this was nice.
But the process is. I hope that kind of answered the question. I was kind of going back and forth with a couple of things, but
So it just shows how people would be able to see, the newest business certificates, their location, et cetera.
yeah. So you're on the homepage of the town website, eastlongmeadowma.gov. I have to remember, I have made a lot of changes to the website recently. So you go to, I guess the fastest way is actually through businesses. You can look at this business licenses page here, and it'll take you straight to the business certificates or business license page. And this gives you an overview of the process to obtain one, and then to see all of the active ones. Currently, this is just the active ones within our new system. And the next 4 years, once everyone renews, because they're good for 4 years, everyone will be on here. But we're not going to go through our old system and update it on here because it's a lot of basically cleaning data, and we don't really have the time to do that, unfortunately. So this is really just the active ones as of January of this year, when we move to the new system. But the record number is here. If you want more information, you can submit a public records request, like it says right here. You can click on that. It'll take you straight to the form, and you can submit that to the clerk's office. They can give you all the information you want within the public records request laws. So, and then name of business, address, issue date, expiration date. It's all right there. And it'll probably be updated once a week, I would say. We have to do it manually. So,
Okay. All right. Questions from the board? Hearing none, this is a public hearing, so I'd like to open the public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience or on Zoom that would like to be heard, please step forward or raise your hand on Zoom. I say again, if there's anyone who would like to speak on this issue, please come forward or raise your hand in Zoom. Hearing none, I'd like to get a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none on the motion to close the public hearing by roll call, Mr. Fonseca,
Aye.
Mr. Punderson,
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
I'm a aye as well. Any further questions, discussion? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to recommend that the town council adopt the proposed amendment of the town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws 450 table 3-1 schedule of use regulations and article 11 definitions in relation to home office as presented.
I second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. A roll call, Mr. Fonseca,
Aye.
Mr. Punderson,
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. All right. So the next case is a public hearing for case ZN-2023-05. The members present are Mr. Fonseca, Mr. Punderson, Mr. Terrell, and myself, Russell Denver. And Mr. Clerk, would you read the public notice?
Sure can. Case ZN 2023-05 for a proposed amendment to the Town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws, 450 Article 3 use regulations and Article 5 special use regulations in relation to the parking plan review process in order to improve administrative efficiency, clarity, and improve consistency with the Massachusetts general law. Petitioner, Town of East Long Meadow Planning Board, 60 Center Square, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01028.
So again, the petitioner is this board, the planning board, but I'd like to turn it over to the Director of Planning and Community Development.
Hearing,
All right.
should be at the end.
So,
Yeah, but that's.
Okay.
just a summary overview of these proposed amendments, changing the parking plan review procedures so that the planning department is responsible for the review and approval, with the exception of granting waivers for required spaces.
One after.
Insert language allowing the planning board to grant those waivers, and insert language to clarify the process generally. And the planning director, within those changes, the planning director can refer the parking plans to the planning board for their approval in certain circumstances, and always when a waiver is being requested. And again, just minor language changes for clarity and consistency throughout the whole section. And that's kind of the overview. I do have, I could open the thing if we want to actually go through the language, but I'll open it up to the board for any questions.
So again, I'm going to ask you just to give a description of how like the current process works and what the new process would be. And let's just, as an example, let's use the Reminder Building on North Main Street. It's an office
Yeah.
building, and just use that as an example.
So right now, typically what happens is the parking plans don't typically get updated unless they go for site plan review. And the only time they go for a site plan review is if there's a change in ownership or, again, just a lot of different things kind of coming up. So site plan review is really where the parking plan is housed. Whereas this I guess process will kind of be its own thing, where people can, if there is a change in ownership or if they're repaving their parking lot, something like that, they would have to go through the parking plan at the very least, even if they are granted a waiver of site plan review. And currently that's kind of the process, but we don't require a parking plan every single time that there's a waiver. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. So this is just, again, making it more consistent where we're making everyone do it, no matter what. And we have a process for it on paper. And currently we have a process for it in the bylaw, but in practice, we're not actually really doing it. And it hasn't really been like consistent. So that's where this kind of comes from. And I didn't really use an example, but I can.
No. How about if Center Square, let's say let's say Sleepy Mattress leaves and they bring in an accounting firm in the same location. They have to get a site plan waiver because it's a change of use. Does that take into play some type of parking review?
Yeah, so the parking review would be if there's a site plan review, there's going to be a parking review. If there's a business license and there's a change in use, it would trigger, and I always review the business licenses. So I would then trigger them for a parking plan review at that point. And that might not necessarily need a site plan review,
Right.
but it could with the proposed site plan changes. So that's the change there. And the reason for this is because with the site plan review changes, not every single change in use will require a parking plan or a site plan review. But every change in use would require at least a review of the parking plan to make sure that it meets the minimum requirements. If there isn't a use listed in the minimum requirement section, I would refer to the planning board at that point just to make sure that it's being reviewed.
So this planning board is not being taken out of the total equation.
Right.
So why don't you talk about when parking issues would come before the planning board under this proposal?
So if there's any, like I said, if there's not any requirements listed within that section, we would then bring it to the planning board. If there's any reason that the applicant would prefer the planning board review it, we would take it to the planning board. Again, if there's a site plan review requirement, and those thresholds are kind of listed in the site plan review as well, where there's 10 spots or more as one of the thresholds for expansion of parking lot by 10 spots or more would require a site plan review, which would also include the parking plan at that point.
Can I ask you something? Where did you get the change in 10 spots number? I mean, if it changes one spot, you're gonna up to 10, you can okay it then without the planning board.
I could, but it's a case by case thing. Like some parcels are smaller, some parcels are larger. And the uses vary as well. It's determined based on the requirements as well. And that formulas are not being changed.
It's already
at all.
done, yeah.
It's not being changed at all. It's going to be the same. It's just me reviewing it. Again, it's kind of creating that efficiency. And effectively, we're already doing that to some degree. And we're trying to make it consistent. That way applicants know what to expect. And it's not, half the time we ask them for a parking plan or we don't, because it's not something that this board has historically looked at every single time. Whereas now it's something that we would require every single time there's a site plan review.
But they're already kind of like pre-qualified just through the process of getting to the planning department. That's what you're saying. They're pre-qualified. There's no need for people to come to us all the time. So you can make the determination there rather than passing it for another 2-week schedule and out of their lives to come to the planning board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions before I open the public hearing? So I'm going to open the public hearing. If there's anyone in the audience or on Zoom that would like to be heard on this matter, please come forward or raise your hand. I'll ask one more time. Anyone in the audience or on Zoom wishes to be heard on this matter, please come forward. Hearing and seeing none, I have a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing on this particular item.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So motion made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Hearing none. By roll call, Mr. Fonseca,
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Any other further questions from the board? Hearing none. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to recommend that the town council adopt the proposed amendment of Town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaw 450 Article 3 use regulations and Article 5 special use regulations in relation to the parking plan review process as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? The motion been made and seconded by roll call. Mr. Fonseca.
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So I'm going to call a public hearing for case Z and,
Close that one.
we voted to, we did close it.
Right.
Yeah.
We're good.
Did we?
We closed it. Yeah.
Yeah, we closed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Calling case ZN-2023-06. Members of the board present, Mr. Fonseca, Mr. Punderson, Mr. Terrell, and myself, Russell Denver, and ask the clerk to please read the notice.
Got it. Case ZN 2023-06 for a proposed amendment of the Town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws for 50 Article 3 use regulations, Table 3-1 schedule of use regulations, and Article 9 site plan review in relation to the site plan review process in order to improve administrative efficiency, clarity, and improve consistency with Massachusetts general law. Petitioner, Town of East Long Meadow Planning Board, 60 Center Square Grill, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01028.
So as chair of the planning board and the petitioner, I'm going to turn it over to the planning director again.
60 Center Square Grill.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just center square, not
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I am too.
Their marketing works.
It doesn't smell the same.
Just doesn't.
Good.
All right. So a quick overview of these bylaw amendments. They are kind of spread out a little bit as well between articles. So we'll start with Article 3, use regulations, replacing the language surrounding site plan review to reference Article 9 of or for clarity and consistency with changes in Article 9. And then within Article 9, site plan review, minor language changes for clarity and consistency. And then I'll kind of go through these, but the ones in red, just to note, the ones in red are not actually within the current language. And those are just changes that I would recommend that the planning board include in your recommendation with to the town council if you choose to do so tonight. So starting with that, or with the design review 9.2, changing planning board administrator to planning director. That's done in the section below that, or the subsection below that, but in subsection A, it was missed on my initial document. So 9.3, projects requiring site plan review. That's the bulk of the changes, replacing the existing language, specific thresholds requiring site plan review. And I can pull those up after just to go through those one by one if we need. And then 9.5, review procedure, replacing existing procedure with one that is more clear and consistent practices, allows for use of online permitting software. And then again, changing within the reference to the fee schedule, it's 500-1 should be 500-10. That fee schedule's going to the council pretty soon for review and adoption there. So just updating that reference. And then 450-9.5E, adding expiration language, which is the next slide. Again, I didn't include this in the first one, so I'm just going to read it out loud for the record at this point, in case you want to include it in your recommendation to the council. So section 450-9.5E, expiration, a site plan review, approval, or waiver of the site plan review granted under this section shall lapse after a period of 1 year has passed if substantial use has not sooner commenced, except for a good cause, or in the case of permit or construction, if construction has not begun by such date, except for good cause. This period shall not include such time required to pursue or await the determination of an appeal referred to in MGL Chapter 40A, Section 17. This is similar language to what's in the special permit bylaw about expiration regarding special permits. So with that, that should be everything on that one.
So I'd just like to address the expiration one. So I actually asked Bailey to include this. It's amazing how many site plan waivers that we grant that never open.
They just sit there.
They just sit there. And it's a way to kind of clean it off the books. But there is an ability to kind of come back with good cause to say, okay, I was delayed for construction or whatever. My business didn't open right away, and we could do it that way. But there have been some like 5 years. I've been on this board 6 years. Some are like 5 years old that we granted and they never opened.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make sense just to leave them on the books.
This will flush it after a year.
Yeah.
Well, it'll make it easier for us to track as well, because then if something hasn't moved in a year, then we'll be like, okay, well,
What's going on?
we don't know what's going on. We can
Yeah.
contact the applicant and figure out what to do.
Any questions from the board?
No, you just answered my question, because I was going to ask if you were going to reach out at the expiration time, if you were going to reach out to find out what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start keeping track of that. The online system will actually help us with that, because we can set an expiration for something like that.
Right.
So,
Okay.
So this is a public hearing. So if anyone's on Zoom or anyone in the audience would like to be heard on this matter, please step forward. Say again, anyone on Zoom or in the audience who might wish to be heard on this matter, please step forward. Hearing none. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none by roll call. Mr. Fonseca.
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Any further questions from this board on this matter? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Make a motion to recommend that the town council adopt the proposed amendment of the town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws, section 450, article 3, use regulations. Table 3-1, schedule of use of regulations, and article 9, site plan review in relation to the site plan review process as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none by roll call on acceptance. Mr. Fonseca.
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So the last of these, I'm going to call this a public hearing for case ZN 2023-07. Members present are Mr. Fonseca, Mr. Punderson, Mr. Terrell, and myself, Russell Denver. I'm going to ask Mr. Terrell to please read the public notice.
See if I can get this one right. Case ZN 2023-07 for a proposed amendment of the Town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws 450-11.2, terms defined in Table 3-1, Schedule of Use Regulations to amend recreational facilities and include fitness facilities. District Town of East Long Meadow Planning Board, 60 Center Square, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01028. Got it.
So again, we are the planning board and the petitioners, but I'm going to turn it over to the planning director.
Right. Last one. So for the recreation facilities, I kind of wrote the public notice before we actually dug into the full language. The changes were actually a lot less than I thought they would initially be. So I'll explain the changes a little bit first, but minor language changes for clarity and consistency, literally just changing recreational to recreation within the definition section. And the other big changes are allowing by right in the business district and the commercial district, and then allowing the use by special permit in the industrial garden park. And just a couple notes, it's already allowed by right or by special permit in the industrial district, which is a similar district to the industrial garden park. And historically, there have been some recreation uses within an industrial garden park. A couple of things of note: 330 Chestnut and 126 Industrial Drive. Those two were technically accessory uses, but nonetheless, they did have outdoor fields. So that's all I have in terms of the presentation. Any questions?
Questions from the board? Hearing none. So this is a public hearing. So again, I'm going to open the public hearing. If there's anyone on Zoom or in the audience who would like to be heard on this matter, please step forward. Anyone in Zoom that would like to be heard on this matter, or anyone in the audience like to be heard on this matter, please step forward. Seeing and hearing none. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion to close the public hearing? By roll call, Mr. Fonseca.
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
And myself, Russell Denver, is an aye as well. So, motion.
I make a motion to recommend that the town council adopt a proposed amendment of the town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws, section 450-11.2, terms defined in table 3-1, schedule of use regulations to amend recreational facilities as presented.
Second.
Motion made in second. Any further discussion? Hearing none by roll call, Mr. Fonseca.
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
And myself is a yes as well. So I want to thank the audience for sitting through this riveting part of the meeting. But it was really a very important piece of business for this board and for the town, and there are people who will benefit from this moving forward. So thank you very much. I want to thank Bailey and Nina for your fine work on this. And hopefully the town council will take our recommendation.
I want to thank them too, because after being on this for a lot of years, you heard a lot of complaints about how long it took to get my business certificate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we improved it with the business certificate application changes that I helped with the clerk's office, but this will make it even better.
That's good.
Great. So I'm going to call this a public hearing for case SD-P 2023-01. Ask the clerk to read the public notice.
Case SD-P 2023-01, request for preliminary subdivision approval for a 13-lot subdivision located at 362 Parker Street, assessor's parcel ID 75-11-0368 Parker Street, assessor's parcel ID 62-31-A and B, Fernwood Drive, assessor's parcel ID 75-10-1A, and rear Fernwood Drive, assessor's parcel ID 63-62-0, located in the Residence A zoning district. Applicant Bretta Construction LLC, care of Mr. Thomas L. Bretta, 32 Eastwood Drive, Wilbraham, Mass. 01095.
I know Mr. Lebec and
Tom Bretta.
nice to meet you.
I'd just like to mention for the board, I have worked with our Quebec and Associates a few times on personal business prior, and we have no contracts now, and it will not sway my decision at all.
Applicant.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Rob Levesque from our Levesque Associates. Tom Bretta is with me this evening. He's the project proponent. We are here for the proposed subdivision to be named Scarlet Drive, so conflict with any other names within the town. So this is a 13-lot subdivision. Essentially, what we're proposing is, I like to use the term by right, but we're meeting or exceeding all of the design standards for this project. Specifically, we have these lots. Exact cul-de-sac maximum cul-de-sac length. We have all the center line radii met. So we put it on front here. This is what we go through the numbering here. So it's a little funny. So it's lot 1, 2, and then we wrap 3 through 13. We also will result in A, B, and C lots, which would be A&R lots. But the subdivision itself would include the 13 lots with 2 lots off of Parker fronting on the proposed. It's fairly straightforward. Obviously, it's a preliminary. We are requesting a few waivers. Most of those are housekeeping items, logical project. I'd be happy to go through the housekeeping contract, go through the waiver requests. Should it please the board. In addition, we also have some comments from plan review comments from Mr. Mitchell, and I think there's also there are some details. So however you'd like.
What's your suggestion?
Waivers, maybe.
Okay.
Okay, so we do have a request for waivers form. Page, you have 2 pages to it. It's going to be waivers. Go specifically. So we're requesting first a waiver being requested for the plans to be drawn at 100 scale. Majority of the plans have been scaled. So it's really how to fit it onto the plan sheet. More of a housekeeping item. The waiver number 2 is B. A waiver is being for the protection of trees greater than diameter. The proposal would be to, I don't know, it's always a funny thing to discuss, but within the roadway, obviously we have to clear roadway, etc. Along with adjacent right of way, be able to construct that grade appropriately. And then within the lots, typically the people have control over their own lot, building single family homes. We would certainly do that in a manner sensitive to the environment. Obviously, plans for individual lots we've provided, but so that's a logical waiver that I think we request just about every time. C would be a waiver being requested for the required pavement width of 30 feet. As part of the submission, it's being requested that the pavement be 24 feet. Reduces impervious surfaces, which can be more sustainable. One, costs a little bit less for the applicant, and 30-foot width is more standard to a industrial road or something of that nature. It can also help with traffic calming. So we believe that's a lot.
So just on that one, we normally do get something from the fire department. We didn't get it this time about the turning radius of trucks
Yes,
when they're in there.
yes.
So I think before we approve that, we do want to go back to the fire department and get their thoughts on that.
Sure. So the width is pretty standard. So most municipalities do require 24 feet. In the event that the fire department required that later on, obviously, fire and water, we don't mess with, right? So if we needed to go back for the purposes of what we're showing here, the center line radius and the cul-de-sac radius is all the subdivision standard. And the width of 24 feet wouldn't affect the access for the fire. But certainly if they had a question, we would certainly address that prior to this. A waiver is being requested for the installation of sidewalks on the side of the street within the subdivision. So we're showing it along the north side of the street, which is the kind of the interior here. Seems logical. We bring it all the way to the end, so all houses have access to it across the street. We have a terminus here. We're returning that back to the street. Again, if that was an issue, we could certainly discuss that, but it's fairly standard of what we would request. I know that there's sometimes alternatives that are discussed, but we're happy to do that. And then a waiver is being requested of the required fencing around the stormwater basin. Part of the submission is being requested that a fence not be located around the stormwater basin. Kind of an attractive nuisance. Most fences that are required can be, up to 4 feet high, 3.5 to 4 feet high. Kids can typically get over them. I know most of our basins are designed at a 4-to-1 slope interior, 3-to-1 basins. 4-to-1 being a really mowable slope, a really gradual slope. If it's really a safety concern for the town, it's not a showstopper for us, but we think it would be more aesthetically pleasing. And frankly, probably not going to keep kids out. These basins are designed to drain within 72 hours, typically based on the DEP standard.
Why don't you show people where the basin is
The
located?
basin would be located within this parcel here. So it would be in the backyard of Lot C, Lot 4, and Lot 3 and Lot A. So kind of centrally located here. So it'll be in folks' backyard. I would expect, I wouldn't doubt that, folks could get out there and get in there if they needed to, but it's such that the basin is really gradual. And those are the waiver requests. Further questions on the waiver request before I switch?
No, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. So I do have comments. I believe these are from Mr. Mitchell dated July 27, 2023. And I think these are from water, sewer, and stormwater comments. So I'll go through.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So the section of Parker Street where the proposed tie-ins for water and sewer mains are proposed is under a moratorium until November 1st, 2024. Only the superintendent of public works can grant permission to enter this roadway. Special condition would need to be met as far as flowable fill for all trenches and infrared techniques for asphalt repairs to blend into newly paved roadways. Blend into newly paved roadways. Center and fog lines will be repainted 50 feet in both directions at any area that was disturbed. It's logical comment, makes perfect sense to us. We understand the requirements. They want to make sure that, fairly new pavement is not drastically affected. So we understand that. Second one is 8-inch existing sanitary sewer main located on Parker Street is near or at capacity. Currently, there are 298 homes that flow to the sewer main. The maximum safe limit of an 8-inch pipe are around 250 to 260 house connections. This does not take into account added flow from infiltration intrusion from cracked pipes and manholes, as well as illegal connections such as down leaders and sump pumps. Please provide DPW with the engineering report from professional sanitary engineer, PE, with calculations to confirm the capacity exists to support the added flow, and the town's 8-inch sanitary sewer main will be able to accept the added flow from these 14 new house connections. So typical flow from this is going to be about 330 gallons for a 3-bedroom home. If they're 4-bedroom, it'd be 440 based on your standard Title V calculations. We are more than happy to meet with DPW make sure that we satisfy any questions or concerns that they have related to capacity. And actually speak with them in detail about any specific concerns they may have. In the event that for some reason sewer became not available, that Title V could be utilized. The soils are permeable in the area with town water and valid perk tests. We could do septic systems. So we would like to do sewer. We would continue along that avenue, but the lot size wouldn't necessarily be affected by. We anticipate pursuing that. All site work is to be done by DPW specifications, direction. Stop in there. Please have the contractor reach out to DPW to do that. DPW has made some updates on some of the materials, catch basin frames and covers. More of a housekeeping item. We're happy to address those. Houses 362 and 368 Parker that are to be raised will the existing water and sewer services be reused? If not, the sewer lateral must be excavated at the property line and capped to town specification. So we anticipate if we can use the water services, we would. A sanitary may end up going towards Scarlet Drive, or as mentioned, we had 2 perk tests. So we can certainly vet that with DPW. Lot C may be available to access sewer main on Fernwood if enough pitch exists. So and there's some more on that. We'll address that. Minimum size of stormwater drain is 12-inch diameter for tie-ins and 15-inch diameter for main lines. So we'll address that, no problem. Applicant to submit stormwater pollution prevention plan. That's required for any project over an acre. So we'll do that. The stormwater application is required prior to the disturbance, so that's not an issue. Applicant to submit signed illicit discharge statement as part of a stormwater report. Have that as part of the definitive. And DPW requests pre-construction meeting be set up prior to commencement of construction, and that is logical, and we will certainly do that. I believe those are the comments that we've received. I don't know if your planner has any additional comments.
I'm going to turn it over to Billy right now.
I would just say that until, I guess we have a chance to hear from fire and,
DPW.
yeah, DPW, if there's any
Some
additional
concerns,
comments,
definitely.
potentially, we continue it. I don't really have anything additional at this time.
No idea. So any other questions from the board before I open to the public?
No, I just agree that we have to hear
Yeah.
definitely from DPW.
There's some work here.
Big enough radius for the fire department.
Right.
To clarify, this is not from DPW?
No, it is.
Okay.
There's, I just want to make sure that all the condition or all of the comments that were submitted have a full response and make sure that they're satisfied with that.
Okay, so they're requesting information, just to clarify for the board, they're requesting information that we would typically provide in the definitive submission. So preliminary submission doesn't have required, it wouldn't have this information, but certainly before the definitive submission, what we would do is we would be like, sit down with him, see exactly what he's looking for, prepare design plans that meet their specification and bring that back before the board. When that plan gets submitted, we would certainly expect to do that, make sure they're comfortable with it. Any other, reviews related to that could be affected at that time. And so,
Yeah, so just so everyone understands, there's a preliminary plan, which he's presenting.
Yeah.
And then we vote on either yay or nay on the preliminary plan. But all the things the town is requesting that they get additional information on, he would need to work all that out with the DPW, fire, planning, and so forth, then come back to this board for a definitive plan before any work could be done. So it's a multiple step process. So if we turn around and vote to allow the preliminary plan tonight, there's still a lot of more work that needs to be done. So I just want to make sure you're all aware of that.
yeah, so essentially the preliminary in $2.56 will buy you
Right.
About $3.55.
Yeah, exactly. It will buy you a cup of coffee.
Did you say that the main and Parker Street's only eight inches, the sewer main?
Yeah, they said existing sewer main. That's what they're saying. Yeah.
That's,
But this is, so let me start. So this is a public hearing. So why don't we just open it to the public? Anyone that has questions, concerns, and then your questions and concerns, oh, 1 second, questions and concerns then can be part of the process moving forward. So they can answer questions before the definitive gets approved. So who would like to start? Young lady here.
I'm gonna ask if anybody who wants to speak would please go up to the table, just sort of sign.
And sign
you
in.
have to sign in.
Sign in.
It's a public meeting, the people at home.
We have our rules to
Come on in.
follow.
I live on Fernwood Drive for 50
Oh,
seconds.
please sit down. You have to sign
Sign in.
in. So,
Sit down, sign
Yeah.
it, relax.
just relax.
Sign my name.
Terrell can go back to Center Square and get you a drink.
Yeah.
Everybody else, you know, so.
We're taking orders.
Sorry, that was too.
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Live that one down.
No, I sit or stand or what?
Understand, whatever it is.
Whatever you're
Just
comfortable.
need you to be able to heard in the microphone.
Okay, we just need to, that way.
I live on Fernwood Drive for 50, and I don't understand where that street is going. Now, is that, the black, is that a street that you're developing? Or is that supposed to?
Cul-de-sac.
So the answer through.
Cul-de-sac.
Yes, but go ahead, answer the question.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to be disrespectful. This is Fernwood Drive right here, ma'am.
Oh, okay,
And this is Parker. So the
Right.
Lighter gray are the existing streets.
okay,
The darker gray here with a hook. This is the proposed.
okay, that's what I wanted
This
to
is
know,
the-
okay,
This is the cul-de-sac where you turn around and.
okay, all right. All right, so that's not Fernwood Drive, this is okay,
No, ma'am, this is Fernwood here.
okay, all right, thank you.
Can you just state your name and your address too?
Lynn,
You wrote it down, but just in case we can't read
okay,
it.
Lynn Dovek, 125 Fernwood Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone else that wants to speak has to do the exact same thing.
Sorry.
Anyone else want to be heard on this matter? Come on up.
And you can pass the,
Couple questions.
you can pass the sign-in sheet around once you sign in if you want.
Okay, sure.
Speed it up a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Sure. So my name's Anthony Trainese. I live in East Long Meadow, 10 Angela Lane. So I was looking at this. My sons are here. They're going to come forward. So we were aware of it during the very preliminary information, way before it even came to this level. So a few questions that I had was, one, the environmental impact. Has the Conservation Commission been involved? Is this even fall under their jurisdiction in terms of wetlands protection?
Bailey, can you answer the question on whether it's in front of conservation?
It has not been in front of conservation, and as far as I'm aware, I don't think it's within their jurisdiction.
Do we know that definitively or no?
I can speak to that.
Okay.
So the subject property, so you have, in order to be in conservation jurisdiction, in general, in an inland wetland situation, it would be within 200 feet of a perennial stream or 100 feet of a bordering vegetated wetland. We don't have any proposed impacts. There's no wetlands within a jurisdictional vicinity of the project.
Okay, because looking at the GIS map and the topographic map, due west of that is all wetland. Substantial amount of the wetland, which you don't show it on the map. Fernwood loops around and then there's a lot of wetland area there.
This
But
way?
Yeah, we're
correct.
Okay, yeah.
It's actually the designated quarry, previous quarry for the town. So that was one. So absent being a wetland, then there's no impact on a MESA site, Mass Endangered Species Act,
Not
that we're aware of. Has any environmental consultant been brought in on this?
So under the Mass Endangered Species Act, they have a mapping
Correct.
with polygons. So there are
Yeah.
two different polygons that are arguably jurisdictional.
Yeah, I looked at it, but I wasn't sure if
Yeah, they
the
have-
GIS map wasn't.
It's hard. They have a lot of layers, file map and some other layers that aren't jurisdictional, so to speak, with regard to a project.
Correct.
There's two layers that are priority habitat and estimated habitat. So those two layers do not fall within the subject property.
Okay,
And then beyond that, there's no further requirements by the Endangered Species Program or the Conservation Commission for any study of species unless there was a sighting of something,
okay.
in which case there's no way to know if there were any records. So the answer is there's no jurisdiction to our knowledge.
All right, so, because generally, prior to a building permit being procured, Concom's got to sign off on it. So that's definitely going to happen here, correct?
For this project, no, they're not within the jurisdiction.
They've already made a determination?
But to clear, I mean,
Just to clarify it.
but to clarify, I believe the building permit may have a sign off for conservation.
Right.
Which they would look at if somebody was building a lot. They already know generally there's no wetlands in the area, but that form typically does go to the building department. They want to make sure conservation is okay with it typically.
Doesn't it seem more appropriate that they would make that determination before the entire project takes place, and then they deem there's possibly 2 or 3 or 4 lots that fall within jurisdiction? Because I mean,
It would if there was.
nobody's walked it yet.
The closest wetland is 550 feet away. It's not within jurisdiction.
You're sure of that?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to clarify, when we do all of our work, before Mr. Brennan really even signs a contract with us, we go out and take a look at these things. We've had wetland professionals, we have wetland professionals in the office that have looked at this property multiple times. So there's no jurisdictional areas within the subject property. And we stand by that. If there's a question from Concom, we would always be happy to go. Certainly, we're not going to be able to go without anything.
And I would think the developer would want to just check base to make sure that they don't, or he's wasting his money if he's not doing that.
So can you just explain, because so you're taking, when you're saying you're raising, them homes are going, the existing structures there?
That's correct.
Both, the greenhouse and the existing?
Yes, sir.
All right, so north of that, there's another house there. So is that part of the project? The land, no, north.
Here?
Further up, right there. Yeah, there's an existing house,
We
correct?
don't control that property. This is McKenna. Yes.
There was a house, I believe the map I saw was Bardoni.
Yeah, that's a little white house right there,
That one's coming down.
right there.
That's coming down.
Correct.
And so that property now that's being used as a racetrack is going to be part of your development. Correct. Okay.
Sounds like.
That'll be a good thing. So just on the other comment about the sewer, Mr. Punderson?
Yep.
That was actually a good point. So in the event you cannot, DPW says nil on the sewer attachment. Yeah, 8-inch, I concur. I mean, there's what, over 200 homes now feeding that line?
There's quite a few on that line. Yeah.
So if you can't tie into that, now you're going to be in a situation where you're going to market this property in the town of East Long Meadow. I'm not aware that there's any septic Title V issues. They're mostly, the entire town is on sewer.
So I can't speak for DPW, but I can tell you how
Right.
it works. So DPW has raised a concern about it. So
Right.
there's a
Well, I'm not an engineer, but it seems to be, it's going to be a really relevant one. Has your developer proposed replacing that entire line? I don't know what the distance of it is, but.
No, that has not been a discussion. So the initial discussion, or I'm sorry, the initial comment was that they're looking for some information to see if there's capacity. We're going to talk to them about their details. It might lead to further discussions related to.
Oh, I would think so.
Yeah, so we'll fully expect to handle that head on. And
With all well known, if you have to, how long, do we know how long that 8-inch pipe runs? Does that run all the way to the intersection of Porter, or I don't know where it ties into?
I don't have it on this plan. I'd have to double check the GIS.
Does anybody in planning know that?
I don't have that information right.
Is the developer prepared to excavate and replace that line if need be, just to serve that?
The first one bringing it up, sir. So we're
Well, I mean, I think this is preliminary. I get it, but that's, to me, you're going backwards if you're going to put lots in with septic.
It's a good question that was
Yeah.
raised by the town. We're going to address it.
And it'll be brought up. Yeah.
It's going to be probably I'm hoping for Friday. We'll see when we get a chance to talk to them about it.
What's your alternative?
Septic.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Title V.
Yeah.
All right. So lastly,
along with that.
the retention area pond.
Yes, sir.
All right. So that's required, I believe, by code now, correct? based on,
Yeah, I can get into the detail if the board
Right.
likes, but yes.
so I saw on the map, can you point to it again on that map? All right. And what's the size of that square footage wise, roughly?
Well, I can give you dimensions. So
Right,
let's
then.
call it 130 by, 200 and change.
So that's a pretty sizable amount. That's gonna hold a lot of water. So you're proposing no fence.
Right.
So from the aspect of public safety, kids, children in your own subdivision there to be, and existing people. And not only that, the wildlife that can venture in there and drown and become a public health nuisance by odor. I would, and I get it, I listened to you, you said aesthetics before.
Yes, sir.
But it's it's literally not going to be in sight of anybody anyways, is it in the back there?
It's gonna be in folks' backyards. It'll be in backyards. In backyard.
So where are you, from that retention basin, where are you tying in the, into the stormwater? On Fernwood or Parker?
Parker.
On Parker. So was there any provisions in the planning to move that retention area from there to the northern section? Or why did it end up there? Is it by grade?
Right, by grade. Water, it's not holy water, so we gotta go to low point.
All right. So you mentioned before that will, at some point, it will drain itself dry.
Correct.
In a year like we're having right now?
Yeah.
With all that water coming off that road?
So and this is a little bit beyond, this is more in the definitive stage when we get into the stormwater detail. But generally speaking, we're required to match pre-development conditions and post-development conditions based on design points that we're sending the water to pre-development or they go to, and then we're sending them post-development. When we do that, we're supposed to, and we do analyze storm events up to and including the 100-year storm. Just to give you some perspective, 100-year storm in this area is 6.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. A lot of rain. So we have not received that. We've received a lot of rain. It's consistent. It's every couple of days, it seems like. So that the storm system would be designed to handle that well beyond that type of rain event we've been receiving.
So, well, I say lastly, but I keep getting thoughts. And I'll move on because there's other people who want to talk out of respect. But in terms of the impact on the residents of Fernwood, first of all, just to let you know, I mean, you're doing the site plan here, but do you realize that this town is underwater to begin with in terms of water level?
I was not aware of that.
Well, I'm going to educate you. Every basement, majority, okay? Either on Fernwood, they're pumping 24/7. That clearing of that, all that land now is taken and holding a tremendous amount of water. And as soon as you bulldoze it up, clear it, excavate it, put the concrete alley in, the water is going to go to your pond. But you're still getting runoff, property runoff. All those trees, you know how much one pine tree absorbs of water per day?
No.
1,000 gallons. One tree. So with that said, is the developer prepared to deal with impacts against the residents on Fernwood with water problems? It becomes disastrous if you have finished basements, homes on that bordering property, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with a major impact and then the developer packs his bags and moves on. What's the recourse going to be to these property owners? The town isn't going to want to deal with it.
Good question. And they're required to. It's not whether.
Well, should they be required to?
Yes,
you know,
so, sir, it's not whether they're willing to, they're required to.
Who, the developer or the town?
The developer. So when the developer submits a definitive or a preliminary, it's a preliminary plan, right? When we submit a definitive, there's a whole process that we go through. We look at the stormwater, we analyze in, like I said, up to and including the 100-year storm. Then there are plans of record that get endorsed. If we get approved, those get endorsed by the planning board. Okay. Once they're endorsed by the planning board, there are a number of conditions and there are bonds that are put in place. Typically what they'll do is a covenant where they'll post, say, if there's 13 lots within the subdivision, we might post 5 or 6 or whatever. Those lots get tied up legally. It can't be utilized until the developer performs. The developer has to build the roadway typically to the binder course before anything gets released. All of the stormwater would need to be in place, functioning, reviewed by the town, continuously reviewed by the town. There are very specific regulations related to construction. This is not the 70s, 60s or 70s.
No, I realize that.
These are really stringent regulations. Every year they get more stringent.
This planning board has to sign off on the release of the
But
bond.
he's talking stormwater, but what about groundwater? Is there studies on the groundwater impact?
So stormwater is based, first of all, the stormwater design is one of the factors is based on groundwater.
Okay.
All the stormwater basins that are created, typically if they're a bioretention basin, they would be required to be a minimum of 2 feet above seasonal high groundwater. So we have soil evaluators that are trained in the state of Massachusetts to do the soil evaluation. They're similar to what someone who does a septic, well, actually the same person could do a septic perk test, right? So we look at the soil profile, we determine the redoxamorphic features in the soil, which are rust colored modeling, what you would see when the water goes up and down.
Sure.
We can determine the highest level, not standing water, but the highest level that water comes to. There's a nice little evidence line that typically will exist. They'll identify that, and then the stormwater basin has to be elevated a minimum of 2 feet above that. So we also take that information into consideration when we're looking at the houses themselves. So when houses are constructed, in the past, they would just dig down, put a sump pump in. We're looking at finished floor elevations for the homes. How are we designing all of that? It all goes into the soup. We come out with a plan that is comprehensive, that one takes care of that runoff that you were talking about. We can't just willy-nilly send water to people, right? And all of the stormwater gets detained. If you think of an hourglass where the sand is going through the hourglass and is being controlled, that's the same thing. Our basin is big enough to hold the storm event, but slowly meter that out in a fashion that is safe and that does not cause downstream flooding and specifically does not result in more stormwater being produced during that peak of the event than would be normal. Or would be pre-developed.
So have you dug any test holes on that property
Yes.
where the lots are gonna go?
So we throughout.
And you've hit the red pan pretty much in scoop as soon as you put the shovel in the ground, right?
Different soil. Yeah. Different soil compared. Yeah. I would not
A lot of red pan though, right?
I wouldn't say a lot.
No? Okay.
So are we going, you've done a couple of, this is my last question. I just want to make sure other people have an opportunity.
Yeah, and I think we'll.
Yeah, he is.
Well, I'm trying to.
For an engineer,
totality of the circuit.
He's asked a lot of interest.
Only thing the last comment, and I'm leaving, is the stormwater, just for the record, that's a mosquito breathing haven, as everybody, no one can dispute that. Open water, summer months, mosquitoes, and the town doesn't spray anymore. So you're actually creating another situation for the neighbors in the development or the abutters to have to deal with the insects. And with West Nile, I get it. It's required engineering now to keep the water standing, but there should be provisions down the road to put a basin, a covered capsule over these things to prevent that.
Isn't it your experience, though, that these engineered stormwater detention basins actually do a better job than just a regular land left to itself to drain?
Oh, certainly. But the point is well taken. So the 72 hours that I had made environment because they don't want this mosquito free habitat. Right. And I totally understand. Beauty of this particular location, and we're able to have an overflow. Sometimes an overflow and an outlet, right? So we can keep the water moving. So in the event that, let's just say 5 or 8 or 10 years from now, the basin is, vegetated in, remedy. If there was a little bit of water in the bottom of the basin, there's an outlet, like a low level orifice into the basin where we can arguably water it, so it wouldn't be holding water. Even if it wasn't functioning perfectly.
Is the town responsible for the maintenance after the developer?
Yeah, so typically what would happen is the developer would need to meet the performance standards for construction. The town then decides whether they think he's done it properly. The bond can be released and typically would be released if they did. And then beyond that, the developer then needs to go to the town council essentially and request that the roadway be accepted by the town as a town way. Or town road.
Is that gonna be, is there a pump station at sewage?
No, sir.
It's all gravity to Parker?
Yeah, not required. We're able to do it by gravity.
Thank you, sorry about that.
No, you were outstanding. I'm gonna tell you, you really nice job. Other people in the audience like to be heard.
Thank you.
Your name and address.
Ralph Page, 137 Pease Road. I do have some questions with regards to the stormwater. Are you basically saying most of those lots are draining into the detention basin? Is that correct?
So the front yards of most of the lots within the subdivision would be, including these two lots, would be draining towards the road. There are areas, as is typical with a lot of subdivisions, where the backyards would drain as they do now. Would likely end up handling that water either through picking up roof leaders or other methods. If swales are required, we could certainly, work on those as we look at the grading of the specific lots, which would be done prior to definitive. But these lots here, those are obviously an A&R, but those, those are going to go toward the only 2 lots or 3 lots that will go towards Parker and Fernwood would be these 3, but they're just frontage lots.
So when the water drains from the front yard into the road, they're going to go into a storm drain, and the storm drain is going to be connected into the detention pond.
Yes, sir.
The detention pond, which is actually not part of the subdivision.
It would be part of the subdivision. It would be a proposed drain on a drainage easement that would be controlled by the homeowners association.
So it would be on lot number C's deed that it was part of that and that they had access in to do any repair work and.
Yeah. So not being an attorney, if you pay me a couple $100 more dollars an hour, I'll work into one. But I would anticipate that there would be an agreement that the residents of the subdivision would be jointly and severally responsible for the maintenance of that particular.
Yes, the HOAs are actually required to, at this point, be responsible for the maintenance of.
Do we currently know how many HOAs in East Long Meadow have dissolved and are not active, and detention basins are?
That we're gonna have to look into for sure. Yep.
And like I said, I know this is a preliminary, but knowing that lots A, B, and C aren't even part of the subdivision, I don't think they should be the same color as the subdivision. Because when you look at it quick, you assume it goes all the way to the corner of Fernwood. And the subdivision really.
Just for the people in the audience. You're right, Ralph.
Because I mean, my main concern was the detention basin, knowing that all the water's coming into it, knowing that chances are lot C is going to have a house built right in front of it. That's going to be in their backyard, but yet it's going to be controlled by subdivision.
So we could make it part of the subdivision if that was more comfortable for the planning board. The thought is that, it's a pretty clean process through the A&R. Approval not required. There's a Form A process when we have frontage and area that we utilized, something that exists in Massachusetts. Connecticut doesn't have it. So it's a nice, clean, easy way to somebody to divide up the land. But we could always do these 2 as A&Rs, and I'll talk to Mr. Bretta prior to definitive. We could, if that was a major concern, we could always include this as part of the subdivision, even though it has frontage. That could be looked at.
That would be my suggestion to the board. That way there, the detention pond is part of the subdivision. The owner on lot.
But to believe it is at this point, so.
Well, the owner of lot C would then also be responsible for taking care of it instead of letting other people onto.
We might even have enough area to keep that as an A&R and then just make the easement part of lot, say, 3 or 4, 3 or 4. So yeah, we'll look at that for sure.
And like I said, being preliminary, it's nice to have thoughts up front. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you.
Rob, question for you. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. The A, B, and C lots, are those just undeveloped lots? Or just
currently undeveloped, so land that is part of the properties being purchased or being, that are controlled by Mr. Bretta. A, B, and C could be developed, I'm sorry, could be divided without this subdivision because they have required frontage. But per the conversation, if the control of, does it make sense? And I think it's a good question from Mr. Page. Does it make sense to put the stormwater basin on lot C, who's not even part of the homeowners association, but he's burdened by the easement and drainage? So it's logic.
Got it.
Question.
Hi, how are you? Chris Tringhese, 35 Fernwood Drive. How does it come about in terms of a homeowners association?
So so I am a lawyer, but I don't do real estate law. But I've been on this board for 6 years, so it might give me some credence. So within the deed, within each deed, there's a requirement to create a homeowners association that have certain responsibilities of the entire group. So in this situation, and I do believe there is a homeowners association being formed for Happy Acres, which is off of Route 83, kind of kitty corner across from Hamden Road. So in the deed, there's a requirement that they create a homeowners association, and there is the requirement that they all participate in the maintenance. And the town attorney's here, so fill me in if I'm wrong, Jacob. But there is the requirement to pay for maintenance of certain shared requirements of the subdivision. That basin being primarily the one. I think Mr. Levesque had mentioned in the past, you might have seen them with roads, but now the developers come in, they prepare the roads, and then they go to the town council. Town council would then normally, if everything's appropriate, accept it as a public way. So there wouldn't then be the responsibility of homeowners association to maintain the road. But I think in East Long Meadow, we've probably seen, since I've been on this board, 2 or 3 different situations where they've had to create homeowners association. Mr. Page is correct. There are many developments in town that are years and years and years old that had homeowner association requirements. They all went out of business, and it became an issue for the town on who was maintaining those basins. And, the neighbors would come to the town, and the town said, no, that's the developer. There'd be no developer. I think there was a proposal at a town meeting, maybe 10 years ago, if I'm right, Ralph, correct me. To 12 years ago to make the town maintain them, or the town to allow the town to maintain them. And I think it was defeated. It was defeated. So yeah, that's what it is. It's, if you think of like a condo association,
That's why
homeowner association, kind of similar concept.
We lacked access to them in most all the cases. That's why forget it.
I believe, correct, through the chair.
Yeah.
I believe currently you do have a requirement that town has access. They're not necessarily responsible for maintenance.
Right.
But if the town, and there's usually I think there's some language, I think there's some sort of requirement. Well, one, you let the town in if they need to repair it, and then it's supposed to be at the cost of the homeowners association. If the town does, homeowners association doesn't perform, the town typically in the new agreement, I believe, has the right to go in, remedy it, and build a homeowners association.
Whereas before there was no easement, there was no conditions.
And I will tell you one thing with Mr. Christensen in the room. I mean, we are asked all the time by this board to release bonds that have been put in place to make sure that the work has been performed. And we immediately go to DPW or Conservation Commission to make sure that the work has been done appropriately before this board votes on any release of any bonds. So there is enforcement, and there is a way to get the developer to do the work. So
a few more questions.
Yeah.
In a situation where that catch basin, the water is stagnant, what could the potential depth of the water be?
So that hasn't been designed yet. Typically it's a few feet. It would be different in different storm events. So if we get 6.5 inches of rain, it might be close to capacity. So if we create the basin has, say 4 feet of storage. We typically want an extra foot of freeboard in case something happens. So the short answer is it's not designed yet, but they vary depending on the criteria of what we're designing.
In a situation like it was previously mentioned about not having a fence, it's almost as if you're portraying that the catch basin is accessible. Without a fence and signage with children in the neighborhoods, they may be prone to possibly go to the catch basin and catch tadpoles without supervision, maybe, maybe not. Plenty of kids in the neighborhoods ride their bikes, as it was previously mentioned, as a public safety hazard without any source of protection. I feel like it's more prone to be accessible for individuals that are walking or biking and having children access that. And with, as you mentioned, potential of maybe a couple feet of water, situation somebody falls in and doesn't know how to swim, could have a safety concern.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you're spot on. We don't disagree. Depending on the final design of the basin, if for some reason we have side slopes that are a little bit steeper, we'd probably recommend it ourselves or Mr. Bretta would. Obviously, we have insurance companies that insure us and we want to make sure we're doing it the right way. It's not a showstopper for us.
They could be.
It doesn't, we don't see that it could be
I know. Did he say that they are?
Major concern is in backyards. We certainly, we understand if the waiver is not necessarily granted.
Okay. Yeah, I know, but he didn't state.
I'm on 35 and I was wondering, so
I don't like.
in the middle, 35 Fernwood, Trangizi.
Shot.
To the right, one over, yeah, right there. I was wondering between my property line and wherever your outline is, is that, so that would be the acreage for the house. Is that gonna act as a buffer between my property and the development? And with that being said, when it goes to development and it gets cleared, will a house be built or will the lot be cleared and then the lot will be sold and then the house will be built, or everything cleared and then a house? And I was just wondering how much buffer will I have from my property line to the development?
Good question. All good questions. So this is where the roadway is.
Mhm.
This line here is the right of way. So the driveway would come in. This dashed line is the building setback. So technically, independent of this process, if somebody goes to pull a building permit on lot 5, that's lot 5. You're talking about it. They would have to put the home within the setback per zoning.
Okay.
That doesn't mean, typically, I wouldn't expect anybody to put the house back here.
Yeah, right.
Because
I hope
it's gonna
not.
cost them way more for the driveway and everything's right. So let's assume the house goes in a logical location and somebody has a backyard, maybe they want to have a pool. This lot 5 seems to be, is pretty deep. This is about 270 feet from the little bit more actually.
My neighbors has got more depth. My
Yeah, it's pretty
backyard's
good
narrow.
depth.
Yeah.
So I would anticipate, certainly Mr. Bretta is available to communicate with. He's a local builder developer that's, this is Western Mass's home. So I would say, feel free to communicate with him. But what happens, we want to just say this for the board. Once the house is sold, there aren't really any restrictions. If somebody just wanted to go to the property line, or if you wanted to go to your property line and clear, I'm not aware of any restrictions that would prevent somebody from doing that in the future. So I wouldn't anticipate it being the.
So that would be my concern in a situation where the house you guys build, everything's cleared and then there's a buffer and then somebody moves in and then wipes that buffer out. And then all of a sudden I'm looking directly at their backyard. And I went from a property of being on there for 5 years of staring at woods. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing my neighbor in their backyard right up to my property line. I went from complete privacy to absolutely none whatsoever. So with that being said.
So that's allowed.
Of course, no, I do understand that. Unfortunately, and I projected that this was going to happen at some point in time. But again, I went from privacy to potentially no privacy at all. If there could be some sort of consideration for the abutters in terms of privacy with the new development to keep some sort of separation, because I don't know what the size of the houses are. I'm assuming 2 stories. I'm on a ranch. Depending on how big the house is, all of a sudden I have somebody looking into my backyard. I have a narrow backyard. Majority of my property's on the side, but I would like to be comfortable and have as much privacy as possible. And if somebody's in the 2nd story or their floor looking out their window and I'm in my backyard, I went from not having that type of experience to now every day of my life.
Plant your arborvitaes now.
Right.
Big greens. I just did it. I'm not kidding.
$60 an arborvitae though?
I planted 9 of the things and they're
How much an arborvitae?
like $65 an arborvitae.
Yeah.
I grew a big distance and they're now.
Maybe that's something Mr. Bretta will consider for his abutters. $60 on our variety.
Cost you more than that now, but that just
Yeah, right.
plant them now.
I didn't have that problem now until this. So that's why I bring it up as a concern. Maybe that's something that he would be concerned or for the abutters.
So through the chair, Mr. Beretta, like I said, is a little guy. I think, outside this particular forum, certainly come back to the future meetings.
Yeah.
But outside this forum, we're certainly happy to discuss it.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are practical concerns for people that live in the backyard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to be heard? Sure.
Thank you, it's brief. Anthony Tranghese, I'm 25 Fernwood, so thanks for clarifying on the subdivision thing. Because I didn't realize that those were gonna be separate lots. And I think it does make sense to have it as part of a subdivision, especially if it's gonna be an HOA. My question is similar to the abutting, but it's more about the tree removal. So there are a lot of trees in between there, and there's a lot of 18-inch trees, and then there's a lot that aren't. So I'm afraid once it gets cleared out, some of those trees are going to be more of a liability. So I didn't know if there was like a specific plan in place for tree removal, or if it was just going to be, hey, we're going to clear out whatever and then figure it out later.
Let's see what they say. Are you aware of any plan removal yet?
So you're
right there.
25.
Yeah.
So 25 Fernwood, in my opinion, is going to be a little bit different. There's this triangle piece of land that's probably really not a not to say somebody couldn't clear it, but I would think that this lot C would be developed over here. Technically, right now, it's not part of the subdivision, but if we incorporate that into the subdivision, let's assume that clearing happens over here. I think these are all items that we can certainly discuss. Technically, you're allowed to subdivide your land. I wouldn't anticipate, Tom is a builder, so Tom's going to build, which is good. There's control over his projects, right? Not 10 different builders. But what I would anticipate is these are going to be cleared based on what people desire, right? They're going to have probably the same desires that you folks have, probably, unless they're nuts.
Yeah.
They're going to say, I don't want to be looking at my neighbor. So I would anticipate that there's going to be discussions between the landowners and Mr. Beretta, and certainly take your concerns into consideration.
So just that little triangle there.
Yes.
How far from the line on the back of my property, how far does that go back? Can you just take it like your pen?
1 inch equals 50 feet.
I don't need the specifics. I literally need to see it.
80, from there to there, maybe 80.
Okay, so all of that would stay basically as is.
I don't know that.
Well, no, I'm also just talking out loud.
Yeah,
they can't stay as is because you get there and you're not going to be able to. Okay, thank you for that. And then just the last part, I just want it to be known, like you can also get an aesthetically looking fence for the retention pond. So I just want that on record.
Sure. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Young man.
Thank you for the young man. My 82nd birthday.
Well, happy birthday. We're not going to sing to you, but it's happy birthday anyway.
I just had open heart surgery, so I have to be careful these days. All right. I'm the other half of the 57-year lady that I lived with it that long. Bob Dobek. Eyesight's not so good, so I want to get close to this. Okay. I'm at 125. Where am I on?
You're not on there.
Here's 115.
115.
119. I'm guessing 125 is part of it.
Yeah, a little more. So this is 119?
Yes, sir. And then this is going to be 404 Parker.
Oh, okay. So actually, this is not going to be back at 125.
No.
That's all.
Happy birthday.
Quick and easy.
So he planned that for a birthday present.
Yeah, obviously. Happy birthday, Bob.
Anyone else from the audience like to be heard on this? If not,
Oh, we got somebody else.
yep, okay.
And then he's over there. Just around the corner.
Where?
Condon's either on the very, I think. But one's Condon.
Hello,
Good evening, everyone.
hi.
So my name is George Condon. I live at 63 Fernwood Drive. My question was, are there going to be natural gas lines brought into this development? Because I know our street doesn't have natural gas now. Just curious if that's coming in and if there'll be an opportunity for the rest of us to tie into it, if so.
Yeah, good question. If available, we would like to. Are you planning on bringing? Yeah, we're planning on bringing natural gas in. I'm not aware of any moratorium on this specific location. So yes.
Okay. Another question, I heard the owner association would be responsible for maintenance on the drainage basin. Does that also include mowing? Would that be done by committee or is that done by the owner of C? Who mows the grass around the drainage basin?
Yeah, so the maintenance would be the requirement, I'm sorry, the responsibility of the homeowners association. Those documents would be written up. They would likely hire a landscape contracting company or landscape maintenance company to do that. And to also inspect, they'd probably get like a JR sweeping or somebody like that to inspect the structures associated with it.
Gotcha. That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none. So just procedurally, Mr. Director, so we closed the public. Do you want to close the public hearing? What do you think is best interest? Continue the public hearing? It is a preliminary. I think we've had many things answered. They know that before they get a definitive, there are many things they need to do. So
I think,
what's your advice?
If the board is comfortable with the information that you've gotten so far, I would say closing the public hearing is fine and potentially even moving on the actual subdivision, the preliminary plan, just to start the definitive process so we can get more in depth on that. And then, there'll be a public hearing for that as well.
Right.
So everyone can come and ask your questions then, and they'll have more answers for those questions. So.
All right. Do I hear a motion? Hold on. Question?
Yeah, just can I have you heard before you move on?
Sure.
Just under your discussion,
You come up. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
just as a recommendation, if you would consider it to the chair, that there's a lot of information here that they don't have, no fault of theirs yet. Engineering, DPW, fire, sidewalk, one side, which they may want two sides. I don't think you should close this hearing because, to table it for another, possibly, because there's a lot of people may not be able to get here, including myself, the next time when this hearing comes up. So I think in fairness to them too, they just don't have enough information here. We don't have fire. We don't even have public safety, police, concerns about the natural gas that was just brought up. There's a lot of issues here that,
so this is a preliminary.
I understand the procedure. I followed it, but I think, listen, I bought and developed bought in a subdivision years ago, 30 years ago. There was a lot of promises, hopes, this HOA thing, whoever, and not to talk specifics about people that are going to be there buying into that HOA thing. It all has a fee. What's the fee? Nobody knows. To the people that are going to be buying there, the town's going to wash their hands with it. Once they move, they say, okay, your residents got to go to HOA and get your problems resolved. I looked at property with HOA nightmares. They were in the deed and the realtor said, buyer beware, just to let you know, this HOA is bankrupt and it needs all kinds of work.
Just on that note, is it going to be a homeowners association or a HOA? And just as
Well, it's-
in terms of,
So it's okay, so.
Yeah.
So not only that, so homeowners association discussion, but I'd like to just speak to the preliminary discussion and for this.
Right, but
Go ahead.
I understand this is preliminary.
So, okay, so the preliminary process, as the planning board knows, and just for your information, requires us to provide a preliminary plan with utilities and grading and roadway and all of these things, and the term is in a general fashion. So it's very specific that we're here to talk about the general design, the general impacts, and all of the questions that. So let's put it this way: nothing would proceed if the meeting was continued for a month. Nothing would proceed until we had a preliminary approval, because we wouldn't go forward if there was questions on the roadway layout or something like that. Any of those questions, we wouldn't go forward. So going forward on the general project, knowing that there's a number of requirements that need to be met as part of the definitive, everything that's been stated here today, everything that was commented on DPW is either on the definitive process, or actually a lot of the DPW stuff is even beyond the definitive process, where it was, some of the details that they want during construction, pre-construction meetings, those types of comments. So we feel very comfortable that with the waivers being requested, if, one way or the other, if the planning board sees, if they want to look at them, or if there was a waiver that you wanted to punt to the definitive, specifically the basin, I don't think we'd have a problem with it either. So
The thing that concerns me, if you've been around a long time in this town, look, Bluebird Acres. They started digging there. All of a sudden, they started picking up backhoes and heavy equipment that was buried there. And then the whole thing stopped. So they don't know what they're going to find. It could be a 21E site, as far as we know. What oil has this waste? This has been a farm for how many years? We don't know. Nobody knows. We don't have them answers. He doesn't know until he starts bulldozing. So in the interest, I understand the procedural aspect of this, but tabling this until you go to definitive would get more information and then reconvene, let them come back with the information, and then we move forward. We're only talking an aspect of another hearing. And I think they're going to get, it's in their best interest too. I get it. They don't want to, they got to keep spending money but they got to have these, how can you bless a proposal like this where
well, number one, we're not blessing the proposal.
Well, in the definitive.
Where
preliminary.
We would be blessing the preliminary,
okay,
which has a certain set of requirements.
Yes.
Which I think they have met, which they've met.
Okay.
So the fact that they've met the preliminary.
What are those requirements?
He just mentioned. So,
well, no, I want to hear from the chair.
Subdivision rules and regulations are online. You can go through and read them. It's over 200 pages.
Okay.
I'm not going to go through that in detail tonight.
So the board is satisfied, the planning board, that's all been.
They haven't taken a vote on that yet, but again, my recommendation to the board would be at this point, I think that they have satisfied the regulations in terms of the preliminary plan. And again, without moving this process forward and essentially having to submit the definitive application, we can't answer, or we can't essentially require them to answer the questions that you want the answers to.
Well, I understand. I'm not asking for immediate answers, but the waivers, they mentioned 6 to 7 waivers.
So we haven't even discussed the waivers yet.
So are you going to take them in consideration now?
I was going to plan on doing that.
The waivers also technically, this is a preliminary plan. So even if they approve it with the waivers tonight, they can still take those waivers off in the definitive process. This is really just to give them an idea.
Okay.
What that definitive.
Yeah, because most of those waivers have external departments have to review them.
Right. They already did. All the departments have already commented on all of this. Police, fire had no comment. Again, what we discussed was we would like to see what they have in terms of specifically asking them about the road requirement.
And there's another public hearing for the definitive.
Right.
Which at that point, then you could not close a public hearing.
Yeah, sure.
Because
it could be
you have
continued.
this and this and this and this.
Right.
Closing this right now allows them to get to that point.
Understood.
So let's allow them to get to the point, and then we have the same opportunity next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
not here to be a
Good questions, Anthony.
I'm here to all these developments have issues down the road.
There is no question about,
You know,
Been there.
yeah.
there's no question about that.
Yeah, Rob, I feel like we have more than enough time to address all these issues. He's got a call on the Felix and we're
Yeah.
gun ho on everything and gonna meet with everything. And some of the stuff
You've heard what,
Frank Easy brought up about gas lines and all that, that's irrelevant to this subdivision. Whether we put a gas line in or not put a gas line in, whether we put propane tanks in, I mean.
so, okay, so we have a motion on the table to,
You have one more hand up.
okay.
I didn't make a motion.
Hi, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Absolutely.
Good evening. So I appreciate you guys letting everyone be heard. I am Lauren Trombley. I'm 71 Fernwood Drive. I don't believe I'm quote unquote affected. However, I still believe I am, as well as I defend my neighbors' rights who also don't want this to happen, but that's beside the point. My only concern currently is also this catch basin as a parent of 2 children, and not having a fence because it's not aesthetically pleasing where I have children who could drown. So I don't know at what point we can be heard on that subject. Obviously it wouldn't be tonight, I get that. But if I can be told when, if that can be some sort of stipulation for that in order to be built when it comes time, if we can be heard on that.
So you've just been heard on that.
Okay.
That is something this board can take into consideration. We've heard from a number of other individuals who've expressed your same concerns. So I know the developer has certainly heard that. And I think Mr. Levesque, who's representing the developers, indicated that that's not a sticking point on their part. So I wouldn't be surprised when they come back with a definitive plan that there's probably a fence around the detention bays. And I can't promise that, but I would be surprised if it wasn't.
Perfect. I really appreciate that. I just feel like that's my major concern. There's lots of kids in this neighborhood that love to explore the woods. There's kids who get lost and drown throughout the United States very frequently, unfortunately. So as a parent of a tiny wanderer, I'm definitely concerned about that. So I appreciate you guys letting me be heard.
Sure. Thank you. Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none on the roll call. Mr. Fonseca?
Aye.
Mr. Punderson?
Aye.
Mr. Terrell? Aye. And I'm an aye as well. So the process is as follows. So they've heard everything that you have said. And I'm going to tell you, I sat through a lot of public hearings. You've all been very, very good. You have all raised excellent points. And I think you've left no doubt on what your thoughts are for the developer as he moves forward. They will do their due diligence. They have to meet with various town boards. Then they will be back in front of this planning board and you will get notice again. And we'll reconvene and we'll see what the final plans look like before the planning board makes any type of decision on it.
Can I have something?
Sure.
And that meeting, we can decide not to close a public hearing. It can go on for a month. It can go on. It can be done that night. But if there's concerns, we will certainly make sure they're addressed, and we will not close that public hearing until they are addressed.
Yep.
Just one more thing.
Sure.
If you didn't receive an abutters notice, if you weren't within the 300 feet, the agendas are always posted on the town's website for all the planning board meetings, at least 2 days in advance, but we've been doing it a week in advance. So if you just go to the website, look at agendas and minutes, look for the planning board minutes or agendas, you can stay up to date on like when it would come up. And also it's a public hearing. So if newspaper, we post ours in the reminder newspaper. So check for, notices there as well.
Okay, thank you all. Thanks.
And then just a motion to, whatever the board wants. On this item.
Functions.
Oh, next item?
Or on this item still? We just closed the public hearing.
Oh, okay. No, we voted.
We closed the public hearing. We didn't vote on.
We voted to close the public
Oh,
hearing.
okay. Oh,
There's-
okay.
That makes a motion.
All right, I'll make the motion.
Okay, make a motion to approve the request for a preliminary subdivision approval for a 13 lot subdivision on 62 Parker Street, 368 Parker Street, Burnwood Drive, parcel ID 75-10-1A, and rear Burnwood Drive, parcel ID 63-62-0.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none by roll call and approval. Fonseca.
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell. Aye. And I'm an aye as well. Okay. All right, thank you. Thanks for that catch. All right, so director's report.
Can we get these?
If anyone's having a discussion, we're still having a meeting, so please go outside. Please go outside so we can finish the meeting. Thank you.
Rob.
No, thanks. Thank you.
No, I want to get it over with.
Yeah, we're almost done.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in terms of the director's report, I put it in writing. I sent it to the board today, so I'm not gonna go through it all. I'll go through it again in the next meeting if we really need to, but you have it in writing.
Yes, we do. Okay. So, someone gonna make a motion to go? Oh, is GMH here? Anyone from GMH
No, I didn't see anybody.
online?
Anyone?
Anyone from GMH online?
Sam?
Okay, so we'll just make a motion to continue to the next meeting date, which is September 5th.
We could also, I mean, if the board wants to, like I said before we changed or recommended the bylaw changes, the current bylaws kind of put it in your court. Do you want a full site plan? If so, we can start that process with them now. Or would you entertain a waiver at this point? That's my question to the board.
So GMH.
For the, yeah.
Well, it just kind of stuck in there that there's going to be something on existing.
We're adding a structure on an existing cement pad. I think we need a little bit more than that.
They already built it. So they're coming after the fact as well.
Asking for forgiveness, but it's supposed to be on plan somewhere in record.
Yeah.
Of what's on the property. So we have to go through that.
I did a plan for their waiver, but it's not like a full, and again, they already had they already had a building plan, but they don't have a building permit yet because I stopped it on my step and said they didn't have site plan review or a waiver, and that's why they're here. So we're kind of going through the process. They wanted to see if you would entertain a waiver, but I mean, at this point, I think a full site plan would be appropriate, given the circumstance.
So procedurally, should we vote on the request for a site plan review waiver by denying it so that then they begin the full process?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. Just deny a waiver, asking them to submit a full site plan.
They should be here though.
Well, they're supposed to be here for.
They were supposed to be here. They got notice.
They came late for the last, guess we have to vote negative or closing.
Well, yeah, I think.
I mean, it's up to the board.
Well, the motions are positive and this has to be.
Yeah, so if you want to make the motion.
Yeah, make the motion to.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the request for waiver of site plan review for GMH Fence Company at 45 Deer Park Drive for the construction of a welding shop.
Do I have a second?
This is the first one, right? Yeah. A second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. So on the motion, so a yes is to approve the waiver, a no to deny the waiver. Go by roll call. Mr. Fonseca.
Nay.
Mr. Punderson.
Nay.
Mr. Terrell. Nay. And I'm a nay as well. So you'll let them know and they can start the full process.
Okay.
Okay. So a motion to enter into executive session. Someone have that?
Rob.
Make a motion to enter into executive section pursuant to MGL 30A 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to the pending litigation listed on the agenda for tonight's meeting as a discussion during open session would have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the town. The board will re-enter open session only to adjourn. LCAT will not be present.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Hearing none by roll call. Mr. Fonseca.
Aye.
Mr. Punderson.
Aye.
Mr. Terrell.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well.